Today we're making the ultimate comfort food, this creamy chicken and broccoli lasagna. Hi, I'm Tara with Simply Made Eats and welcome to my channel. I'm super excited to share this recipe with you. This is a creamy broccoli and chicken lasagna. It's so good. We're gonna be using a Alfredo sauce that we're gonna make homemade. It's super easy. It does require a little bit of time. It's gonna be about an hour and 15 minutes because lasagna is always a labor of love, but I promise the flavor is worth it, so let's get started. To get started, we're gonna fill a large pot with water. We wanna bring this to a boil on the stovetop. We gotta make sure it's large enough to fit our 16 ounces of lasagna. Don't try and skimp on the pot size here. I'm telling you, it's gonna be way easier if you just use a big one. We're also gonna preheat our oven to 400 degrees. Next up, we have our prep work. We're gonna get started by just chopping up 2 heads of broccoli. We really want a lot of broccoli in this recipe because that's like the star of the show here. We wanna go ahead and cut the stems off. Then you're just gonna cut the florets into smaller pieces. We wanna make sure that this gets really nice and tender when it's baking, so it's important for it to be on the smaller side. Next, we're gonna chop up about a half a cup of yellow onion. I like the yellow onion for this recipe because it's sweeter and it's really nice and mild. Just give this a really nice dice. And we also have 3 garlic cloves that we're gonna peel and mince. Next up, we have our rotisserie chicken. This is a good way to save a little bit of time for this recipe. So I've got a store-bought rotisserie chicken. I'm gonna remove the skin and then just pull off all of that meat. And we're just gonna chop it into finer pieces. This is gonna mix in with the broccoli. So if you want it shredded, you can definitely do shredded. I've just chopped mine up pretty small. Next up, we have our cheese. We're gonna be grating a 8-ounce block of mozzarella. And I like to do this on the bigger setting of the cheese grater. And then we've got 2 cups of Parmesan. I suggest Parmigiano Reggiano because it's really nice and nutty. It is a higher price tag, but I promise it's worth it. We wanna grate this nice and fine because it's gonna go into our Alfredo sauce and we want it to melt really quickly. As that water continues to come to a boil, we're gonna go ahead and get our broccoli ready. So I like to cook my broccoli a little bit before I actually add it to the lasagna layers. We're gonna be cooking our onions, broccoli, and garlic in a pan on the skillet just until nice and tender. We want to use a pretty big skillet here because we have a lot of broccoli. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of olive oil into the pan over medium-low heat, then add in the onions and broccoli. We're going to stir this up really well, then cover it and cook for about 4 to 5 minutes until these are nice and tender. Then you're going to uncover it, you're going to add in that minced garlic and stir that in, then just cook it for another 1 to 2 minutes until that broccoli is really nice and tender. Add it into a bowl, and we're also going to add our rotisserie chicken into this bowl and just give it a good stir. Once that water comes to a boil, go ahead and add all of your lasagna. Make sure it's all covered up with water. And then you're just gonna cook the noodles until they are al dente, which is gonna be still really firm. Honestly, I pulled them out like a couple minutes before I would even think about eating them because they're gonna be baked in the oven too, and we don't want them to get too soft. Once you get those in the strainer, we're gonna go ahead and make that classic cheese mixture, which we all know and love for lasagna. We are just doing a 15-ounce container of ricotta cheese, or ricotta. We're just gonna do an egg. We're just gonna stick it right in there. Crack it over a bowl if you're worried about getting shells in it. I'm pretty good at it by this point. And then we're gonna do half of our mozzarella cheese, which is about 4 ounces. We're gonna save the rest for topping the lasagna. Next up, we have our spice mixture. We've got salt, we've got dried oregano, parsley, and basil. We're just gonna sprinkle that over the top. Then you wanna stir this up. And then next up, really quickly, we are gonna make our Alfredo sauce from scratch. If you wanna save a step on this one too, you can definitely buy Alfredo sauce from the store, but it tastes so much better when you make it yourself, and it's only a few ingredients. The Alfredo sauce, I just use the same skillet that I used for the broccoli. I just clean it out really quick. Then I melt a full stick of salted butter into the pan, and we're gonna add in our heavy cream and just cook this on low for about 5 minutes or so until it's nice and warm. Then we're gonna sprinkle in that Parmesan cheese. It's super important not to use bagged cheese or it won't melt well. Then you're just gonna stir this in until it gets nice and thick. It's gonna take about 5 minutes or so. Once that Alfredo sauce is nice and thick and creamy, it's time to assemble our layers, which, yay, we're almost to the finish point. So what I like to do is start with a 9x13 dish like this. And I'm just gonna take a little ladle of our Alfredo sauce. I do this when I make it with red sauce too. And I'm just gonna put a little bit on the bottom as a base. And then just spread this out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I do like to have a nice thin layer on the bottom. Also, it helps those lasagna sheets not stick. And if your lasagna is kind of sticking together because it's been sitting in the strainer for a little bit, just run it under some cold water and it's gonna make it a lot easier to separate. Next, we're gonna start our layering. I'm gonna do 4 sheets of lasagna, and then there's a little spot where you can't see on the side, and I just do a half sheet just to kind of fill the gap in the casserole dish. We're gonna do 4 of these, and then we're just gonna add some of that cheese mixture on top. We've got about 3/4 of a cup I do on each layer, and then you wanna just spread it out. Next up, we're gonna just spread about the same amount of the broccoli and chicken mixture over the top. Then we're gonna cover it with just a couple tablespoons of Alfredo sauce just to add a little extra here. We wanna make sure we save a ton for the topping. And then we're gonna go in with the pasta. You just saw that little half sheet that I just laid down. That's just gonna like cover that one little gap. Then we're just gonna repeat this process 2 more times. My biggest tip is when you're assembling this is to make sure you don't like overfill the layers, because we're gonna be there's gonna be 4 layers of pasta with 3 layers of the filling in between. So just make sure you have enough and you don't go overboard and then run out, because it's kind of annoying when that happens. Try not to end up with the ugly noodles on the very top, because you'll actually see those. So if you have a couple that have kind of fallen apart, make sure they're on like the bottom half. Also, I only had 1 leftover noodle, so don't be like snacking on pasta as you go, because you don't have enough. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the rest of our Alfredo sauce, which is quite a bit. We probably have about 2/3 left. I only used a little bit in between layers. I really wanted to save a lot for the top, and then you're just gonna like run this over the top of the pasta, the top sheets. So all it has on there is just noodle right now, and we are just gonna go ahead and add all of our Alfredo sauce. And then just take your ladle and just smooth it all out. It should cover everything. And then finally, we are gonna top this with some mozzarella cheese. You can also do some Parmesan if you want. I was super mad because I wanted to do fresh parsley or basil on top, and I don't have any of it today. So, but a lot of times I'll use that at the very end. I'll just pop it right on top after it comes out of the oven. It just gives it a little bit more color. Next, we're just gonna top this with some foil, and then we're gonna pop it into a 400-degree oven for 20 minutes. Then we're gonna pull the foil and cook it for another 10. Okay, so at the end of mine, I hit it with a broil for about 2 minutes or so, just to get the tops really crispy. If you guys could smell my kitchen right now, I guarantee you would make this. It smells so good. It is just absolutely perfect. I'm just gonna cover this with a little bit of foil for about 10 minutes before I slice into it. That's it, we're all done with this chicken and broccoli lasagna. I hope you guys love this recipe. I know it's a little bit labor intensive, but I promise it's worth it. Make it on a Saturday or Sunday night when you're not in a giant hurry like the regular weekdays. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a like if you liked it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for new recipes every single week. I usually post them on Fridays just so you guys don't miss them, and make sure to sign up for the newsletter. That way you'll never miss a recipe. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.